Hey everybody, it's Derek here. I'm coming at you on February 21st, still Black History Month, which is awesome. And today I want to talk to you about that book. All right, so I know every time I talk to you in Black History Month, it seems that I keep saying, "Oh, I found the best book of Black History Month. I found the best book of Black History Month." And, well, you're going to get that again. I started out talking to you about the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, which was amazing. I actually read this several months ago and just destroyed me. And then I moved on to 12 Years a Slave. I just released a book review on that, and that destroyed me even worse. Well, then I read Harriet Jacobs with Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. It's kind of, there you go, there's a good image. And this destroyed me even worse. Now, if you go through that box set in their own voices, read them in that order, I would recommend, because it just progressively gets better and better and better, or worse and worse and worse. If you want to talk about the actual what these people went through, these lives that they had. Why Harriet Jacobs' story is so compelling is because you also see how patriarchy is even a problem. I mean, this is a human story, right? It's not just white cultures that deal with patriarchy. It happens in black cultures too. And we've this has been a very common critique even amongst the ranks of Black Lives Matter, how the very origins, I think it was started by women, and they were sort of weeded out, and it was very strongly a feminist or a womanist movement that sort of got taken over or sort of corrupted by patriarchal elements within it. And you can kind of see that too, how you have all of these people. I can name so many men, and yet when I try to think of like female slave stories, you don't really hear a whole lot of them. And so Harriet Jacobs makes an argument in here that slavery was horrible. You can't really calculate who had it worse, men or women. I think it's safe to say that men probably had the harder jobs overall. That's not saying much, because the women were still put to intolerable labors. But where women had it worse, if you could sort of calculate suffering, of course you can't, there's no calculus for that, obviously. But women had it worse in the sense that they were dealing with much more sexual elements, and they had their children sold out from under them. Which of course men had to deal with their children being sold out from under them as well. But women being more maternal, and then of course, given the gender roles back then, women were the caretakers of their children. I think it's pretty safe to say that in those cases, women had it much, much worse. And another argument that she makes throughout the book is that, the slavery of institution, where we don't really hear too much. We hear about the hard labor, but we don't hear so much the stories of, the sexual exploitation, the stereotypes, and the way that women were portrayed as hussies and very sexual beings, and also the sexual dynamics that surrounded them in these slave environments where, again, very heavily patriarchal. So plantation owners, fathers of families of their own, white families, would rape these women and then have children by them. I mean, we even know, for all the ways that Thomas Jefferson was lionized and turned into a hero. Even he had this history, where he had a relationship, exploited a very young woman, Sally Hemings. And yes, we can say Thomas Jefferson was probably one of the more humane people at the time. And according to objective ethics, like, he shouldn't get a pass on that. And so these are the sort of situations it creates. And she says that, the slave institution, it corrupts both the slave, but especially the slave owner, because in many cases where women had children by these men, and so you have this classic imbalance of favoritism, where obviously all of the privilege, all of the love and affection and the ability to appear in public with the white child, that was what got preference, whereas the black child was just sort of hushed away, and it was very shameful that you had this child by means of your black concubine, really. And she was in a similar situation. I don't want to spoil the book for you. I mean, none of these books that I've read so far are for the faint of heart. And yes, as I say, you can't compare suffering. Suffering, I kind of like how Viktor Frankl puts it, that suffering is like a gas. It perfectly fills whatever container it's put in. It doesn't matter how much is put into it. It perfectly fills whatever container it's in. And that's definitely the sense you get when you read this black slave history. But hearing it from the perspective of a woman is so incredibly valuable. And I think that it should also expand our perspective in the modern age where, our work isn't over. There's still a long way to go for marginalized groups, not just blacks, of course, but marginalized groups overall. And she was a very, very brave woman. You can tell that whereas, these other voices, when they got their freedom, that was kind of enough. Not really, but you know what I mean? Like they were happy to just be free from slavery. But she was, to my sense anyway, in my reading, she seemed to be much more attuned to how much progress had to be made from the perspective of someone living in the time that she did. She could see how even in the North, which would have been like night and day compared to the treatment they got in the South, she could see in the North how there was a long ways to go in racial progress. And even as she moved up into Canada, she could see that. That's what I admired about this story, is she was such a profound voice for progress, and she had this long view of black emancipation. So definitely read this, guys. I know that after all of my recommendations this month, you've got your work cut out for you, but if you have similar interests as me, especially around Black History Month, man, these three in particular have just been wonderful for sort of biographies or memoirs. Thanks for stopping by. I'd love to chat with you guys in the comments about it. So if you have any questions or personal thoughts on these books, I'd love to talk to you down there. We'll see you in the next one. Hey everyone, I hope you liked this video. If you want more like the one you just watched, click the suggested video on this screen. Make sure you subscribe, and to connect with me on my other platforms, my handles are linked below in the description, alright? Take care, peeps. Till next time.